standing in front of George Washington's headquarters, located at Ford Mansion in beautiful Morristown, New Jersey. George Washington's headquarters was built by Jacob Ford Jr. in 1772. Mrs. Ford lived in this house with her 4 children when Washington arrived. Washington used this house as a headquarters from 1779 to 1780. When Washington arrived, he brought with him his wife, Martha Washington, 5 aides, 18 servants, and people called visiting dignitaries. He also brought soldiers trained to guard him. You can imagine that this house was very busy and very full that winter. Let's look at some rooms from this historical landmark. George Washington picked Ford Mansion because of its location. Morristown has the Watchung Mountains protecting it from New York City. When the British troops landed in America, they did so in New York City. The mountains made it very hard for them to get to George Washington and his army. This way, George Washington could spend the winter planning his attack while staying at the Ford Mansion. The winter of 1779 was one of the harshest winters ever recorded. The heavy snow made life for the soldiers very hard. I learned that George Washington brought his own cooks, and this caused too many cooks in the kitchen, so they worked out a way so everyone could eat in shifts. The servants' quarters had very little space. There were 2 rooms, one for the men and one for the women. This made it very cramped for all the workers. George Washington made his office in the library in the front of the house. In this office, he planned attack on the British using maps and models. Some of the maps, journals, models, etc., are still on display at the Morristown Museum, which is a yellow building behind the Ford Mansion. Washington's staff camped out in cots all over the house. Some of the cots are still on display. George Washington stayed for a total of 6 months at the house. The Ford family passed down the house for 100 years. After that, it was sold to 4 New Jersey businessmen, and they created the Washington Association of New Jersey. This is how they preserved the house as a museum for the public. In 1933, the Washington Association donated the house to the National Park Association. The house is now used for tours and is furnished and decorated as it would when George Washington stayed there. Parts of the floors and windows are thought to maybe be original. The same is thought about most of the kitchen fireplace. Many items were donated or collected from other museums.